On this episode of Travels with Bill, we're in Winnipegosis checking out this Manitoba community. You can't come to Winnipegosis without thinking about the Winnipegosis Lighthouse. Okay, maybe it's not the biggest lighthouse you've ever seen, but it certainly is a cute little lighthouse, and you could ask someone to meet you at the base of the lighthouse, I suppose, and well, they'd know just where to go. They'd end up in this park right here. Now, it does look like a lighthouse, lights up at night, even has a window up at the top, and look at the bottom, way down to the bottom, another window, and a cute little door for the elves to go in. Lighthouse has been there since 2012. It's pretty cool. You know, when I drop by Winnipegosis, my favorite spot is the Mossy River Inn. I always end up eating lunch here because it's amazing food. So nice inside too, and the staff are always happy to see you. So if you're coming to check out Winnipegosis, absolutely make sure you show up and get some food there and take a look around because there's lots to see in this community. In fact, just over the edge of the Mossy River Inn, is the Mossy River itself. Now, this is the very end of the Mossy River. It starts quite a ways back. In fact, we have a different episode about Rainbow Beach. You'll hear more about the Mossy River in that. In the distance there, that's Lake Winnipegosis. So the town of Winnipegosis is located right at the edge of the lake where the river goes into it. Now, I know I called it a town, but it's not really. It's an unincorporated area. It used to be a village, but then when amalgamation happened in Manitoba in 2015, it became part of the RM of Mossy River. Of course, the community is still called Winnipegosis, but you won't find it on a list of official towns anymore. Well, the whole idea of Mossy River and Winnipegosis has a lot of meaning to it. The lake name, Winnipegosis, it's had some different spellings over the year. It came from the Cree word meaning little muddy water. Of course, Winnipeg means muddy water, so the osis means the little part. Mossy River, in fact, now these days is spelled with an E in the mossy part, but before 1900 the E wasn't there, so it got added on a little bit later on. You know, right here where we're looking, this is the site of the original Fort Dauphin fur trading post, right where the Mossy River went into the lake. Now, of course, at one time there was a Hudson's Bay Company here too, but not the store like you'd expect these days in downtown Winnipeg. This was one of their forts. The peak of Winnipegosis, that was in the fur trade, the 20th century timber and fishing industries. This was a very important place, as you can imagine. First postmaster here in 1896, the Dauphin Railway showed up in 1897. Now, this was the northern terminus for that railway. The trains had to turn around here and go back. Of course, they went through Fork River. You can find more out about that place on our channel, too. This was originally going to be part of a rail line that went quite a ways. It didn't work out that way in the end, and it started going a different direction, but there's lots to learn about the rail line. We're going to swing around here and come through the downtown area so you can see more of what's in Winnipegosis. You know, back in the 1900s, 2 hotels, 2 boarding houses, 3 general stores, a butcher, a blacksmith, a 30-man sawmill, and 2 large fishing companies, all called Winnipegosis home. Telephone service showed up in 1912, but 1915 there was a total of 5 subscribers in the telephone book. There was a Bank of Ottawa branch here too. That opened in 1919, eventually became the Bank of Nova Scotia after some mergers. Winnipegosis Credit Union opened up in 1953. It merged into the Dauphin Plains Credit Union in 1970. So we'll fly kind of through the downtown. Off on the right-hand side, you can see the school up there. Then more towards the left, you can see that little park where the lighthouse was. The old railway station's there too. It's been converted to a museum. We'll take a little better look at that. And then down the middle here, there's sort of a strip of businesses, I guess slightly to the left-hand side, right against the museum there. You can even see the MTS tower. Now, Winnipegosis finally has cell phone service. It didn't for many years. It was really bad here, but they've upgraded that tower in the last couple of years, so now your cell phones work just like they should in the community, making it even easier to come visit. And of course, if you live here, a whole lot easier to carry your cell phone around and stay connected. Now, believe it or not, speaking of connected, 1921 was the first time Winnipegosis had radio. It was at the ice cream parlor. They had the radio receiver there so people could gather around for some ice cream and hear what was going on in the rest of the world. You know, I mentioned that bank that started out here, the Bank of Ottawa, became the Scotia Bank. Well, I've got kind of a sad story to share. In the summer of 2021, the bank closed, which was really quite unfortunate. You never want to see something like that happen in the community. Now, the credit union still exists, but the actual bank itself, it kind of disappeared, and anyone that's using it ends up having to go to Dauphin now. Unfortunately, I was actually here the day the bank closed. I do a lot of work for different companies, and one of them is the bank. So I ended up getting sent in here to take all the printers out of the bank as it was closing. And it was kind of sad that day. You know, a lot of people coming in to say goodbye to the bank. And kind of sad for the staff too, because there wasn't necessarily a whole lot of what's next for them with the banking system. When they closed the bank, that was kind of the end of it. And there was an awful lot of history disappearing that day. Obviously, the bank had been there for many, many years, one of the oldest branches around, and yet it was time, unfortunately, to say goodbye to it. One of the most interesting things about closing a bank like that is you would think, you would have the last day and then the next day it would get closed. Well, not so much. It was open until 11 a.m. When it closed at 11 a.m., things were already half taken apart, and certainly by 1 o'clock in the afternoon, you wouldn't have been able to tell there had ever been a bank there. It was kind of eerie how quickly it can disappear. Well, we're kind of to the far edge of Winnipegosis now. We'll go a little further, then we'll start to turn around. You can see a church down there in the distance and lots of houses. Have you noticed how wonderful the area is? Of course, we're filming in summer when everything's green. It's actually kind of towards evening. You can see the shadows there from the trees. That gives everything a bit better contrast, so you can see exactly what's going on in the community. It's a beautiful place to live. I could see, if I had to pick someplace in Manitoba, well, I may pick a spot like this, just because it's not too close to the city, but yet there's enough people here. You have the things you need. There's certainly a restaurant, some other little shops and stuff, so you can check out, the gossip that's going on, I suppose. But yet you're far enough away that you don't have neighbors, like door to door to door, and thousands of them. If you do need to travel, people here would drive usually to Dauphin for their shopping if they wanted to get to a bigger store, or of course they just stick around home and go to the local grocery store in town. Well, it was less than 100 years ago electric power showed up in Winnipegosis. 1937, the power came and the first streetlights were installed. In 1961, they widened Main Street a little bit and paved it as well. Water and sewer installed in 1965. It was 1977 when that former train station building was purchased and became the museum. We're flying over a bit of a cemetery here. It's actually a fairly big cemetery, but look how well kept it is. Lots of green space there. And as we pan back around, you kind of see the downtown area again. And of course, the ever-present lake, which is such a big part of the community. Well, unfortunately, down below, there's something missing. A few years back, you would have seen this, the National Grain Elevator. It was built in 1950 by National Grain, and by 1965, it was increased to 85,000 bushels. We're passing over the site just in the bottom of the image there. It was sold to Cargill Grain in 1975 and closed in April of 1981. The building was abandoned for years and then was demolished in March of 2021. Here's a peek at it from 2019. Obviously, it was starting to degrade a little bit then, but for years, it was part of the skyline in Winnipegosis. As we fly down the Main Street area again, see how there's this green strip goes through? Well, you can kind of imagine where the elevator was, the railway track just kept on coming up, and then way in the distance there is the actual train station. Now it's in its original location. We're going to get in a little bit closer here so you can see it. But you can imagine there would have been room here for some different tracks and such, and of course the train to come and go with passengers. Now, speaking of scared of old buildings disappearing, this is what the station looked like back in 1977. You can see a couple different tracks there out in front of it, and at that point you'd be a little bit worried the station might be going to disappear. It was built in 1897. Now, of course, it used to be a Canadian National Railway station, but before that, it was a Canadian Northern Railway station, and even before that, you would have called it the Dauphin Railway. Well, it was the Dauphin Railway that actually renamed itself into Canadian Northern and started to expand and got huge. Well, until some bad things happened, it became Canadian National and it was nationalized. Well, that building, you saw how horrible it looked back then. Look how good it looks now. They have fixed it up and made it such an amazing place. It hosts, of course, the Winnipegosis Museum. Now, that's generally open from May to September, 9 till 4. Admission, they tell us, around $5. But that's subject to change. You can check out the website to find out a little bit more about that. Now, you can still see some gravel there where the tracks used to be, and they've got a teepee set up there as well. You can poke your head in, see how those work. But look at the station itself, how wonderfully fixed up it is. They've even got a few displays outside of it as well. There's a little cart there with some cream cans around back. There's some machinery. Of course, the Canadian flag. So this is a must-stop place in the summer to see some of the history of the area. Walking around the grounds, certainly there's a lot more than just the building too. You'll see lots of little displays and signs here that show you a bit of what's going on. I want to walk around the museum a bit so you can see it closer up because, well, as good as it is from the air, it's nothing the same as walking right up to it. Now you can almost imagine, can't you, years ago how excited the kids were to hear the train coming and seeing the bustle around the station as things were loaded and unloaded and people came and went, and Well, it's a lot calmer the evening we're here, but still, it's such great history. So there's the sign for it. The Winnipegosis Museum, former CN station, open May to September. The Winnipegosis Historical Society are, of course, the folks that look after this place and are doing an amazing job of it, because even when it's not open, just wandering around, it's kind of cute to see how well they've got it all fixed up. There's that little cart out in the front as well. You would have seen those. Going to the train, getting stuff, taking it back in. Of course, the passengers would go in this part of the station, then a little further down here there's a freight door. That's where the freight would have gone in and out. So it's much as it was. And you know, at one time there were stations like this in almost every community in Manitoba. So many of them, though, have disappeared over the years. Now, certainly there's a lot of history here before the railway showed up and before settlers came, because when you have a nice big lake with fish and you have all the hunting and trapping that was around here too, you're always going to have people around. And they've got a teepee set up here on the museum grounds, so you can see what that would have looked like. Well, imagine way before all the rest of this stuff existed. Wouldn't it be kind of cool? A village full of teepees. They've come, they've set up, they're there for a while. It would be neat to visit that, wouldn't it, and see just exactly how it all worked. Well, here you can at least get a little bit of a taste for it by seeing what a teepee looks like all set up. You know, there's something at the museum grounds that might interest you, worth the trip, especially when it's open, to find out what exactly these machines are. Now, I challenge you, you should know. So leave a comment below on the video and let us know exactly what you think those are. We'll see if you're right or not, because, well, certainly if you're from Winnipegosis, you know, but maybe some visitors have figured it out too. There's a York boat as well sitting there on display, so you can see exactly how those used to work. Oh, and while we're in the downtown, I wanted to show you some of the flowers. They have these wonderful flower planters, and they've got such neat stuff in them. We were here in the middle of summer, of course, so in the winter you wouldn't find this, but in the summer they have decorated the community with flowers and planters. And, oh, it looks so good. Well, there's Lucky Dollar Foods, one place you can shop, but there are other places here as well. And this is what, well, of course, was at one time the Winnipegosis Credit Union merged with Dauphin. These days it's called Fusion. Well, I think credit unions are kind of enjoying changing their names pretty often. Either which way, though, it's here and ready to serve you. And the business is right across the area from that park, because, of course, before it was a park, that was sort of the railway yards. And a neat place to stop. There's that little lighthouse again. You can just kind of get a feel for how nice the community is in the evening to take a stroll in. A lot of communities have a river run through them, and this is kind of the same here, but not a lot of communities are on the edge of a lake. So when you look around here, you'll find the Winnipegosis District Office for Manitoba Conservation. Now, normally they'd be all about, you know, like hunting and stuff, while here, it's way more about fishing, because of course they have the lake to worry about. So they've got lots of boats there in the compound, and they even have their own dock, which is kind of cool to see a conservation office that's right on the water. Certainly closer to home. If they are going out with a boat, they'd have to tow the boat someplace, but here, well, they can launch it just right from work and get going on the Mossy River itself. We'll get a little bit closer here so you can see their actual dock. It's a private dock for them, so they are the only ones that use that, but there is lots of other opportunity to get in the water here. Now, there's a bit of a marina going on, and there's some signs posted there that let you know how to use it. There are some fees for using it. You can pay those at the Mossy River Inn or a couple other spots in town as well. All the details on that are found at the marina itself, sort of at the boat launch area. Make sure you read that so you know what's going on. Look how wonderful clear that water is, so smooth and reflecting. Of course, there's one of the spots where you find some of the commercial fishers doing their things as well. Some guys out tonight, just visiting a little bit by the looks of it. Now, I have to admit, I didn't have a boat with me when I came to Winnipegosis, but we did the next best thing. We wanted to fly through the water here. So we're going to actually take the drone out on the water. Well, we're not going to go under the water. We're going to stay above it a little bit and show you what the Mossy River looks like as you go down the river towards the lake, because it's such a beautiful spot. Look at the green on the sides. I love how blue the water is, reflecting the sky for us. Now, of course, there's boats along the way. We'll show you a couple of those as we go by here. But there's also some special visitors. Now, you may think it's the guy sitting on the boat. Well, he's special too. I'll give you that, but not as special as what's swimming a little bit further on, because you could see some wildlife here, and it's not just fishes either. Looks like a beautiful evening for being out on the boat. Well, I think he's kind of wondering why exactly the drone is flying by. But imagine just slowly sailing out here. Now, I've got a fairly little boat. I don't know if I'd really want to go and spend a bunch of time on the lake, especially if it's rough. But an evening like this, I can imagine just going through here with the trolling motor, maybe seeing if I could find some fish or not, and then maybe heading out to the lake just a little bit before I came back in. But even if I was just cruising for fun, it'd be a good spot for a pontoon boat, wouldn't it? Just go and look at the sights. Well, up ahead, I see our special visitors coming. We'll go a little faster here to get closer to them so you can see what it is we've been waiting for, because they are having a beautiful evening out for a swim as well. Yeah, it's pelicans. Isn't that cool? They're just swimming around here. Well, that's kind of a neat thing to see, isn't it? You know, the lake itself is 5,370 square kilometers. It's the second largest of the three big lakes in Manitoba. Of course, Lake Winnipeg's the biggest. Lake Manitoba, though, is actually a little bit smaller than Lake Winnipegosis. Lots of communities along the Lake Winnipegosis, of course, but also Camperville, Pine Creek, Duck Bay, Salt Point, Meadow, Portage. Those are all south of Birch Island in the lake. Shoal River, Pelican Rapids, Dawson Bay, and Denbigh Point are all to the north of the island. The lake supports a commercial fishery of walleye and other freshwater species. Northern pike and mullet make up about 80% of the commercial fishing these days. Well, those guys look like they're having a pretty good swim, don't they? Maybe we'll leave them alone to do what birds do, and we will go and take ourselves a little trip down the Mossy River here. This time we're actually going upstream, back towards, well, where we started out, really, at that Manitoba Conservation Office. We'll lift up here in a second. You'll see how we're really, really close to the Mossy River and then we'll kind of get back to the museum we were looking at a little bit further on. Still, though, this is beautiful as far as going to the lake to go camping. Oh, I'd take coming here in a nice summer evening like this, too, because wandering around and just seeing it all, absolutely a perfect way to spend some time. It's not just me, though. Winnipegosis is home to a little more than 600 people, so lots of people love to call this area home. Well, back to the museum we go, and we'll finish our little fly around here so you can see some more. Have you subscribed to the Travels with Bill channel yet? We would certainly appreciate if you would do that, and hit that little like button, the thumbs up icon as well, to let people know you're enjoying the video. You know, when you subscribe to the channel, you make sure to see all our videos when they first come out, and certainly there's lots of videos to see. We're traveling around Canada looking at all sorts of interesting places, like Winnipegosis, and so many more. In fact, videos to come on Fork River. We've already got one posted about the church in Fork River, so worth checking that out. Well, that does it for me, but I'm going to leave you with a couple more minutes of flying around downtown Winnipegosis. See if you can find your house in the video. I bet you can. And hey, we'll see you next time. Farewell for now from Winnipegosis, Manitoba on Travels with Bill.